Hello, everyone. This is Tristan Evans from Geek Vibes Nation, and I have the honor and the pleasure of being here today with Mr. Toby Meakins and Mr. Simon Allen, the two brilliant minds behind Netflix's recent horror film, Choose or Die. How are you gentlemen doing today?
Great, thank you. Fantastic.
Great, thank you. Yeah,
Great,
really lovely to be here with you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to meet with me. We over here at Geek Vibes Nation love Choose or Die. I've watched the film like 6 times now, and like I discover something new every single time. Like the last time I watched it with one of my sisters, and like she and I were going back and forth about like the setting and whether it's a dystopian, and like it was really fun this last time watching it with her because we got to debate so many things. So again, thank you both so much for taking time to speak with Geek Vibes Nation.
Thank you for bringing the viewer count up.
Thank you for your sister. Thank you so much.
Yes, hey, any way I can help. Hey, we over in my household, we want a sequel. We want several sequels. So hey, any way we can get the views up, we're trying to do that.
Well, actually, we got the numbers. Yesterday for the first 10 days, and I'm allowed to say this because it's kind of public knowledge. But we did over 30 million hours in the first 10 days, so it's officially a kind of a Netflix hit, which is great.
Yes. You can say more people watched it than live in Australia, right? Which is a pretty good expression of how big the audience has been. It's amazing.
Yeah, and top 10 in over 90 countries. So it's been been great.
That is so great. So what you're saying is that sequel potential is looking good.
We'll have to. I was talking to Toby yesterday. We can't say anything, but I was joking that one of the because the fun part of this has been it's been so big and it got such a big reaction and so many people watched it and and you see lovely things, you see criticisms, you see everything because something this scale you see the whole range. And a few people kind of picked up that we shot it in the UK, which I'm sure Toby will talk about if you want him to, and with British actors and American accents. And I said to Toby, you know what we should do if we do it again? We should shoot it in the US, but pretend it's the UK and cast American actors and have them do British accents and see how that goes, right? Just to kind of mess with people. But no, it was, it's been great. It's been amazing. It really has.
That is great. And so from my understanding, this is the first full-length feature film to come out of your partnership, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. That's correct. We've worked together for 10, 15 years?
A long time.
A long time. So we went to college together and Simon went off and did television and I became a commercials director, but we always came back together to do short films, because in fact, we're even talking about doing another one. We don't need to, but for the sheer joy of it, people think we're crazy. But talking about doing another one now, just because it's a great way to find out what you really like. So yeah, as our careers progressed, we managed to build up favors. So the short films, we could actually spend less money and make better films because I could get crew for free and there was time, there were favors and some new actors and so that's what we did, and we ended up here, which is a departure from what I was doing and certainly a departure from what Simon was doing. Yeah.
So we've done the short films. I think have you seen any of the shorts, Tristan? Have you seen?
I watched Floor 9.5.
Right. Okay. So that's pretty typical of the kind of thing we were doing. These kind of weird left field ideas in really efficient 2 minutes, kind of fast and but always. The big thing was always that we were working on very tight budgets and very tight circumstances. And this movie was no different. It was the same thing over a longer period, but it had the same very, very similar challenges, very, very similar difficulties because it was a low budget British indie, so we feel like we've exercised those muscles quite a lot over the years together.
That is great. And so I was going to ask you, how does it feel to finally have your full-length feature? Because that's such a monumental moment for you guys as filmmakers. How does it feel to just have that completed and out into the world? Like, what are you feeling right now?
Today, I'm feeling relief. like pretty much. We had you have it when you do a Netflix film, when it becomes a Netflix original. After 10 days, you have a meeting with them, which is very kind of private, and I'm not really allowed to talk about it. But they were very happy, and that for me was like, okay, like we've made Netflix happy. If you make Netflix happy, you're on a good thing.
Secrets of the algorithm. That's what it's very mysterious.
The alchemy of the algorithm.
But it's I mean, it's a, you know, it's a strange thing because I mean, you know this, you're very active on social media, you know, and it's difficult to navigate really, because I've made shows before, we've made short films before, and there's always been some kind of reaction, but this is by far and away the biggest. And I think just because the sheer size and reach of the Netflix platform, you know, it's 213 million subscribers, or it was until a couple of weeks ago, and still a huge number of people. And, you know, 190 countries, or actually 189 until Russia invaded Ukraine, but it's still a huge number of countries. And, you know, it's, and because it gets delivered to all of those places and all of those people instantly, you just get this massive, the first 3 days were just insane, you know, and it's a maelstrom, but it's really exciting. And I think that I've worked on shows, and Toby understands this from sort of knowing me for so long, which have been on like a small TV channel or cable channel. And, you know, more people have watched our shorts than watched those shows sometimes, you know, and so to have an audience of any kind, you're very, very grateful. It's like, as a storyteller, you just want people to listen. And even if they don't like it, that's great. You're so grateful for the fact that they gave you their time. And
absolutely,
that's been the best thing, you know, to know that we've made something, and, you know, over 30 million people have seen it already, and more are coming all the time. So it's a real privilege, and we're really grateful for it.
Yes. I mean, Choose or Die is just so clever. It's so scary. It's just like overall just such a well-made film. I wanted to ask you, like, how did you even come up with that idea? Like, it's just such a clever idea. What are kind of the origins of that idea?
Beer and pizza.
It was so the short, the Floor 9.5 short, which we made for Fox on a limited budget, which went Fox very stealthily put it out as part of a Halloween marketing campaign for Skittles. So it was a short film, it was a short horror film, but it was presented as a commercial. It didn't even mention Skittles. They just slapped like, Skittles, eat Skittles. We scared you to hell, you know. And it had this really big reaction, and lots of people heard about it. And
they played it out in the baseball, and
there were really angry people, and like, what the hell was that? And people loved it, and all of that. And we had a lot of people saying, you know, what do you want to do next? And we were originally developing this idea as a short form TV series. And we had Ridley Scott came on board as an executive producer, which was amazing. He'd seen the shorts and loved them. We had Jeffrey Katzenberg, of all people, bought the show for his platform Quibi, and we spent a year developing it, and for Quibi, which was great, and it was really exciting, and we were really ready to go. We thought we had something really radical and unique, particularly because the episodes were very disruptive, very, very different. And then, of course, Quibi happened the way Quibi happened, and suddenly we were left with this project. And it was this guy here who was the only one really who, you know, we had this kind of dead project, who was like, look, I think I can make this into a feature film. And we were all like, this is crazy. What are you talking about? It's a short form TV series. And so he took all of the episodes and put them together and sent them back to me and went, what do you think of this? It's about 85 minutes. You need a bit of this, you need a bit of that. And it's the way it is with directors always. They have that vision from the start. It's always been that case with Toby, that, you know, every short, even if there hasn't been an idea, there's been an intention to make something. And so something happens. And this was the same. And we worked on the script a little, and the financiers came on board, and we're like, okay, we'll do it for this much money. There's a window here where we think we could do it, but you need to get the cast. And it happened. It happened really quickly when it started happening. But
it just came
because of him.
Yeah. And you have to cut your cloth to a certain extent, and you have to be really inventive and look at what you've got and go, okay, how, you know, what are people clean? Yeah, you really do have to cut your cloth. What people keen to hold on to? What can we let go of? How can we make it work? And how can we make them? How can we make? We always fully intended to not to make a movie with as big a reach as possible, even though we had a small budget. That was always the intention. We wanted it to be able to reach a lot of people. We wanted it to be, you know, hit horror fans, but also hit like a mass audience. That was our intention, which is a big challenge for an indie horror, you know. But we made it. Like, so I feel like I've won today, which is great.
Yes, you have. It's an amazing film. It's an amazing film. So, and then one thing I want you to talk about is the actors, of course, because they embody their roles so well. Iola Evans is such a compelling lead. Kayla is just a compelling character in general. Like, I love her. She's definitely like moved up the list of like my favorite final girls. So I want to ask you both about the casting process for finding Kayla, but also for creating that character. What was that like?
So casting in itself, so obviously, because it went through financiers, there was like, okay, you've got to cast to a certain level, otherwise we're not going to greenlight the movie. And we were having to make decisions very early on about who would be a big enough name for the financier to greenlight. I mean, it's kind of that hard. But I always wanted a lead who was a great actor that hadn't done very much for the lead of the movie, and so we started looking for people who were coming through in the UK and the US, although COVID became much more of a problem and we couldn't bring people over from the US. But yeah, we looked at some really great people all over, and Yola, it's Yola, not Iola, actually, like, yeah, that's how you pronounce the name. She's just so natural. Her tape was great. We were having to tape cast people at the time because, again, it was COVID, and her tape was fantastic, and she just kind of embodied the part for us. And so yeah, we were like, okay, we want to go for her, but then it was like, okay, but you need a name, you need a bankable name for Isaac, and you need a bankable name for Hal, or you need a bankable name for this person and a bankable name for that person. So it was great because I got what I wanted, but it also put us in this tricky position where we had to start finding bankable names for the other characters because I wanted to cast the leaders from an unknown, basically.
But she was, in terms of a character, she was, I mean, the entry point for developing the character came from the genesis of the whole idea. That the first thing we ever had was the name Cursor and the idea of an 8-bit video game with a curse in it, right? That's literally all we had. And then and Toby was the one that said, you need a contemporary character who's being menaced by this. And then as you started to unpack that, you realize, okay, in television, I'd come up with a lot of people. I'm in my mid-40s now. I was in my mid-30s when I started, and everyone was in their early 20s. And I would reference in writers' rooms, I would say, Jaws, or I would say E.T., or I would say, The Lost Boys. And most of them hadn't seen it, that movie. They hadn't seen that movie. They didn't know that song. And they didn't really care because they had their own stuff. And it was bewildering to me. I was like, I grew up with this. You don't know about this? You don't care? And we realized that's actually the story, right? To a degree, and it says something an awful lot about the toxicity of nostalgia, the presumption from a certain generation, particularly my generation, our generation, that we expect younger people to follow the path that we laid and to enjoy the things that we enjoyed in exactly the same way. And actually, you know what? When you look back at that stuff, a lot of that stuff is charged with hugely problematic assumptions and tropes and ideas and concepts. And so it was really good fun to kind of create this character who doesn't have reverence for that stuff, who doesn't have any kind of emotional purchase on it, and then also put her in the mix with another young character who kind of likes some of it, kind of enjoys some of it and kind of appropriates it and uses it in his own way.
One of my favorite lines from the movie is, "Who the fuck is Robert Englund?"
Yeah. And obviously, fuck the 80s at the end was a huge thing. But then you have this kind of villain of the game, and the game embodying the idea of toxic nostalgia and everything that goes with that. And the kind of gamer guy, played by Eddie Marsan, Hal, the collector, who's sort of, it's that thing, isn't it, of I think a character like his, you spend so long looking in the kind of rose-tinted rearview mirror that you're not looking ahead anymore, and you're just going to end up crashing, right? That's what's going to happen to people like that. And because you do need to make something new, and you do need to experience new things, or you're dead, or it's over, So it felt like we were playing with all of those things, and I think it really, really works. And we got really lucky with the other two guys. I mean, Yola is incredible, and Toby was very, very definite about wanting someone like Sigourney, somebody that's there and the audience doesn't have any relationship with, so it's pure character. And the other two, we were just really lucky that they responded to the short films. They liked the script. They were available, which is always the biggest thing.
I mean, it's a lesson for filmmakers as well, actually, like young filmmakers coming through. Eddie Marsan really responded to the shorts, He did it because he liked that work so much, And Ace is a gamer through and through, and he really responded to the script. And so, it really worked for us. And it was great. And it was great to have such, again, on a UK indie feature. Like, I had a great crew, but they were a young crew, Like, I come from commercials background, and the people I work with in commercials were a lot more experienced than a lot of my crew. And just we had Eddie for the first 2 days on set shooting, and it just set the whole shoot up. You know, he's consummate professional. He's brilliant. He came in and he knocked it out of the park, and everybody kind of settled down and went, "Oh yeah, we're doing something good here. We're doing something that's worthwhile here." It was great for me. It was great for the crew. It was great for the film. So I can't thank him enough for that. It's, very cool experience.
Yes. Sorry. But like Robert Englund, when I heard his voice, I completely freaked out. I was like, oh my God. And I see the A Nightmare on Elm Street poster behind you. So you're a huge fan.
I did this for you, okay? Because so I'll tell the story of this. This is actually signed, right? So up on the left there, and so Toby and our American
behind your head side.
Give me a second. So he when we got Robert, they were like, we got to get him to sign some posters, right? And these you can't quite see, but this is fucking huge, right? This is huge. I can't get this on a wall. It's the only place I can have it. And I up there it says we all got to request a line from the movie. So this is God by the hand there. And then up here it's Sweet Dreams Simon, and Toby's got one and all that. And I just got it framed, right? And then I knew we were doing this with you, so I thought you would like to see it. But it's really heavy. It takes 2 people to lift it. It's insane.
Oh, wow.
But it is a thing of absolute, I mean, it's an iconic poster. It's beautiful, and I cannot believe that it happened. You know, I mean, Toby will talk about the process, but we had that Voice of the Game idea, and we looked at sort of candidates from around that era who might have been, might have done that job, taken that voice recording job, and he was top of the list. And Matt Wilkinson, our producer, just said, "Well, look, let's ask," and he came back and went, "Yeah."
He was more than top of the list. His name was in the script all the way from the beginning, wasn't it?
Yeah, all right.
Like there, you know what I mean? And we were having these discussions. We're like, "What the fuck if we don't get him? Who are we gonna like? How's it gonna work? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How's it going to work?" And he said yes. He said yes. And then it was brilliant, actually. It was like a month before we started shooting. I had like a 2-hour session where I got to like, it was Zoom again because of COVID. But, I got to voice record with Robert Englund, who's like just incredible. Do you know what I mean? He was like, and he gave me so much advice about the film, so much advice about directing. And it was great. He was like, "Oh, let me just do it this way. So let me chuck you this just in case." And we do this. And we ended up with a load of extra stuff. And at the very end of the film, there's a great, I don't know if you watched it past the credits, but the very end credits, Liam Howlett from The Prodigy does our music, and he uses Robert Englund's voice. So I've got like this iconic kind of like producer composer and Robert Englund on the soundtrack of my movie. It's like, oh my God, that's so cool. I love it so much.
That is very cool. I did not watch it past the credits. I need to go back and do that.
It's very, very dark. Yeah. So the final kind of credit roller, there is like this very dark kind of like dance track with Robert Englund going, "Choose or die." And it's like, wow.
That's cool. Okay. I'm definitely going to go back and check that out. So I want to talk to you about the world building, because my sister and I went back and forth about this, because it has like this, the movie has this really cool like dystopian feel to it. And it's funny because she was like, "I don't know if I would call it dystopian. I think it's just kind of a reflection of what Kayla's going through." I mean, she's had this tremendous loss by losing her brother. Her mother is in a very bad state, and she has sort of dead end job. She has dreams, but she's sort of running into these roadblocks. And so my sister was like, "I don't think it's dystopian. I think it's just a reflection of how she feels." And I'm like, "Hey, it can be both." So could you guys just talk about how you came up with the setting and how that reflects what she's going through?
I mean, Toby will talk more about the kind of physicality of it and where it was shot and why. But in terms of the intention behind the city, I mean, there was obviously the undertow of it feeling like a video game city, it feeling quite binary and empty and basic, which was a thing that we talked about very, very early. And I think it is there in the movie. Toby captured it brilliantly. I'd also say that we both grew up, I mean, particularly me, I was in what we call the care system in the UK in the 80s, and I was homeless, and it looks and feels a lot like the kind of places that you don't feel connected to, because I didn't have a tribe, I didn't have roots, and so it was always anywhere. It was always concrete and anonymous wherever I lived, and Toby lived in places like that.
That's a great word. It's about her not having a tribe. Do you know what I mean? It's like her coming from a place, but no longer feeling like she comes from that place. Is like a really interesting thing. There's a great track by by a grime artist over here, and it basically says the same thing. It's like I'm walking through my old estate, but nobody wants to talk to me anymore. They all say I've changed, and it's like that kind of thing.
Is that Deal With It, Toby?
Deal With It.
I didn't know you like that track. I love that track.
I love that.
But I think what Toby just said is right. Yeah, I love that track. No, but it's that I think what he's just said is totally correct. I think that's something I mean, certainly from our childhoods in the 80s, but even now, I think it's worse. You know, there are so many urban environments in Britain, in British cities, and I'm sure in America, certainly from the research we've done, we've seen that, where the sort of community infrastructures, the things that apparently that's supposed to bind you together and make you feel like you belong and make you feel like you can socially invest in where you live, have been so degraded through underinvestment, through withdrawal of support and services and opportunities where they've just been choked off, that you're not really living. You're sort of living in a kind of 8-bit binary, very bare, very barren environment where there isn't a lot of hope. And there isn't a lot of opportunity, and there isn't a sense of belonging, you know. And I think it was important that it felt like that. Also, you know, it was a low budget film being shot in COVID where we couldn't have a lot of extras, but you know, so there is a practical element, but it's which you may have noticed. But I hope there's a kind of diegetic legitimacy to it, because it was something we talked about.
Your sister is quite astute.
She is. She should be doing this. She should come on this. Come on, get her on.
I will never tell her that. No.
Funnily enough, I fought for as many extras as I could get when we were shooting, and then the stuff where, you know, the scenes where she's walking down the corridor in her apartment building and stuff, I put extras in, and I took them, and like when we were shooting, I took them out. It just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like she should be inhabiting the space with anybody else. It just felt like it needs to be kind of empty and closing in on her, and the way that the world kind of troubles her is with the sound. You know what I mean? You feel this place. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how you thought about that. You were like, oh, you know, how many people do we want? How many people do we want? Oh, put them in. And it's like, oh yeah, no, it felt clumsy, and it didn't feel like you were kind of dealing with her. Do you know? It felt like you were forcing the issue too much.
But it's like, I think what you do have there, which I really love, and I think again speaks to the theme, is, you know, they're kind of like non-playing characters, aren't they? They're NPCs, you know, and I think socially, particularly in urban environments. I mean, my biological mum still lives in one of the places, you know, and you feel it's really, they are like non-playing characters. You know, there is a lack of kind of community and connection, and there is a distance, and because it's hard. It's those things need support. You need wealth. You need economy. You need opportunity. And when those things aren't there, it's very, very hard to achieve that kind of thing. And so I feel like it is like a video game. It can life for certain people from certain backgrounds can be like a very basic, binary, quite bleak, relentless video game.
That was one of the main things we were trying to get out of this as well. Like, you know, you constantly hear if you work hard enough, you can pull yourself out of anything. And that's just, you know, that's just bullshit. Like, you know, if you work hard enough and you're lucky, maybe, but there's billions of people in the world who work their asses off every single day, and they're not, and then they're pulling themselves up out of anything because the man's there getting you down, right? You know?
Mm-hmm. And, you know, and that's a great lead into my next question, because I felt like there was such great commentary thrown. It was, I won't say thrown in here. Such great commentary worked into the movie. And I feel like you guys it didn't show up in a way that felt like it was preachy or that it was like hitting us over the head with. It felt like very natural, very subtle. And I feel like that in and of itself is an art form, because there's a lot of stuff out there that tries to offer commentary, but it's like, they're not very subtle about it. So I want to ask you, like, how, I imagine a lot of thought went into, okay, how do we say this without seeming preachy, but still getting our point across?
Can I say that I love you right now? Is that okay?
It's the truth, though. It's the truth.
We have this conversation all the time, Simon and I, and we live in a world of echo chambers, right, at the moment. And the only way that you're going to make, in my opinion anyway, that I feel that you can make the world kind of better place to get messaging across is not to slap it in somebody's face, because as soon as you slap it in somebody's face, you're alienating the other half of the echo chamber that doesn't agree with you, right? You know? And so it's kind of like, that's what we were trying to do. So some people, you know, have criticised the movie, and they have for being light, for those themes not coming through strong enough, and for us not. But it's like, if we slam them in people's faces, they're just going, no. But if you kind of ease it through You know, you get and then you feel for Kayla at the end of the movie. Then to you, there's some kind of social justice, and you know, people expect people to watch stuff and change their opinion of the world like overnight, and like when we live in a world where people are doubling down all the time now, and so it's like literally trying to say to people who maybe wouldn't think about it, you know, can I plant a seed?
I think one of the things, and I've heard this, you know, again, as I read a lot, I read as much as I can with the time I have, you know, to try and develop what I hope is an enlightened perspective. And one of the things I hear said about a lot about millennials, you know, which I don't think is entirely true, by the way, is they talk about young people expect the world to be organized around them, and I don't think they do. I think there is a narcissism that occurs with social media and the personalization technology that powers Netflix and, you know, and other platforms, which affects all of us, you know, in a lot of ways. But I think it was really important that we had a young character. And the world very clearly isn't organizing itself around her, right? It really isn't. It's not cooperating in any way. Nothing's falling into her lap. Nothing's going the way she needs it to go. And by the end, the only way that things get fit, and this is kind of a Marxist perspective, right, is that she acquires the code. She acquires the kind of language in which everything's being rewritten, in which everything that oppresses her and holds her has been written, and rewrites it with its own rules to try and kind of turn it on its head and rebuild the world, you know. And the idea, it was a kind of a dark kind of superhero narrative, almost like Unbreakable tonally. That was one of the references we talked about a lot at the end, that she comes out of it at the end and you're not quite sure what she's going to do with this. You know she's going to do something, and maybe you come back in 6 months and this city looks a little different because she's reworked things, and who gets to win and who gets to lose has been changed. And I think that was the other thing thematically, which you've obviously picked up on, was that capitalism, you know, is not a fair, will never be a fair system. It's impossible, because it has to have a top and it has to have a bottom. Somebody has to be exploited in order for somebody else. Somebody has to go without in order for somebody to go with, right? That's capitalism. That's how it works. The only way you make it fair, the only way is either you compete inside capitalism and use what you've got, or you start taking capitalism down and building something new. And I don't know what that looks like. I mean, you know, there's all sorts of versions of it out there in the world. But Kayla, I think that's where I feel Kayla is at the end of the movie. You know, it's like she's got the means to do it, and there are question marks over what she's going to do and the choices she's going to make, because these are difficult human decisions. These are not easy things to talk about or to think about. And
to kind of answer the original part of the question as well, like how did we achieve it? You rely on good actors. Like I think like the subtlety of her performance basically was what you rely on to make that work. You know, and you have to trust your actor to do that. You know, without giving them lines for them to deliver lines. You know,
are you a Marxist, Tristan? Are you, would you call yourself a Marxist?
I don't think anybody in America would call themselves a Marxist.
Right. No. Like, again, like I love the way it ends, and kind of going back to what you both just mentioned, how by the end of the film she has the power. She's kind of removed the gatekeeper. First of all, I just love the idea of there being the final boss battle and like it tying back into Hal from the beginning of the film, because obviously he represents someone who's more privileged and has more access than she does. So I love that really love that moment. So the way the movie ends, and I've been talking about sequels, the way the movie ends, it definitely sets up something. It sets up future stories. Now, I know you can't say too much, but do you imagine multiple sequels? Or do you imagine like, is it a trilogy? Is it 4 or 5 films? Like, where do you see her story going in that world at large going?
Well, we can't say very much, but we do. We talked a lot about, obviously when you develop something, you talk about different versions of it. One of the things we were really excited about was a prequel movie set in the 80s that's kind of like *Halt and Catch Fire*. You know that show, that AMC show? Yes. It's kind of that, but with horror, and you know. And then with Kayla, I will pitch you this slightly, okay? But this will never happen. They'll never do this. But the one of the things, and Toby always shoots things down, but
I'm sat here like, oh God, here we go. You know?
No. But I was like, okay, it's 6 months later, and there's a journalist, and something's wrong with the world, right? Like things keep going wrong, and people are dying, and bad things are happening to people, and it's different people now. It's guys in power, and it's CEOs, and it's what the hell's going on, you know? And he doesn't understand it, and he gets on the trail of Kayla, and he gets on the trail of Cursor. and he gets to Robert Englund because he's like, 40 years ago you did this voice job, and it's this game, and I think it's got something to do with this girl that went missing, and and then that's where you pick the story up, right? And it's where Kayla is now, what she's doing to the world. She's almost like a dark Neo, right, from the Matrix. So there were loads of things like that, and Toby wrote episodes of the show when we were doing it that we weren't able to incorporate in the movie, that are very, very cool and very, very radical and do amazing things. So there's tons of ideas. We
even went back to the origins of the curse as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like, origins, so almost medieval, like medieval Versa, which is kind of cool in itself.
Yeah, the kind of ancient language and the idea that it was the first computer programming language before there were computers and all that stuff. There's some really, the mythology of it, we've really not gone into very much in this movie. We sort of skate across it. There's that one scene where you hear some of it. But we pointedly kind of kept the movie as a kind of keyhole on that stuff rather than kind of front loading it,
And that's one of the things I love about it. I feel like there's so much more that can be told, so many more stories that can be told in that world. And you guys kind of gave us kind of that introduction, but I feel like, although, I obviously want a sequel, I feel like this works as its own thing, but obviously, you can expand it so much more. So I feel like that was well done as well, kind of making it its own sort of standalone, but obviously there's potential for so much more. So I'm fingers crossed. I'm manifesting it. I'm praying for it. I want more. So just know, Tristan in America in Richardson, Texas, is like manifesting sequels.
I'll tell Netflix.
Yes. They're like, who's that random guy? Okay. So what projects, are there any other projects outside of possible sequels for Choose or Die that you guys are working on? And what can you say about those?
Yeah, I have a project that we're trying to get a home for. That actually we did the short together, but it's moved on from Simon and set in America. That I'm trying to get a home for, and Simon and I, we've got lots of ideas that we're trying to sort out. We're trying to decide whether we want to do a TV show or a movie at the moment. I think that's kind of the way it's going. But I want to do. Kind of Simon's obsessed with time, and and we're both obsessed with ghost stories. So I really, really want to do a ghost story or sci-fi horror next. That's what I want to do.
One of the things we really want to do, and we've tried to do with a lot of our horror shorts, is capture the thing that we're very passionate about in horror. Is that I had a supernatural experience when I was 18 years old that was really, really weird and mind-blowing and strange, and to this day I can't explain. And I've consulted neurologists, I've consulted all sorts of people about it. But it made me realize that what often goes missing in horror is that a supernatural thing doesn't explain itself to you. That's why it's supernatural, right? It doesn't have human agency. The whole kind of ghost structure of, it's a dead girl who just wants you to know who murdered her. That's bullshit. That's human. That's not supernatural, And I wanted to make things that capture that feeling, and I'm still pushing for it. It's there in the movies we've made so far, definitely, but I'm still pushing for that absolute sense of kind of sense destroying, doesn't compute, doesn't present itself for the convenience of your human comprehension, doesn't make any sense, and it is bewildering and terrifying and makes you wonder who and what we are and where we are, right? I want to get that feeling into something. So that's what I'm chasing all the time, really.
Awesome. Well, we at Geek Vibes Nation are definitely looking forward to what you guys do next. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today. And again, we are looking forward to your next project. So for any of you who haven't watched Choose or Die, what are you doing? Go watch that film. We would love to hear about it. Drop down in the comments and let us know what you think should happen next in the franchise. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Toby and Simon, thank you so much for this interview. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.